everybody, my name is Puppetine from the Geeky Puppet Show, and today we are here to discuss Eternals. You might see over here, that is not a frog. You are not a frog. Did you know that you're not a frog?
I may dress like Michigan J. Frog, and I might sing like him on occasion, but no, I am not a frog as far as I know.
Say ribbit. Come on.
No. It is not happening.
He is definitely not a frog. We have learned about it. Let's go ahead and say hello to some of the people. Dragon Ball Talk says bad movie club. I would say it's a. I think we're a decent movie club. I don't know. I think why are you insulting the movie club? Ed Brewer says, please let there be spoilers. There will be spoilers. We aren't going to pussyfoot around. I think that's the word. Beat around the bush.
Yes, that is the correct expression. Yes, and no, there will be no punches pulled on this one.
Well, I'm not going to be punching too much as much as I'm going to be talking to. And Marania is saying, I'm here to learn about the movie, not dunk on it. Well, I will not be dunking on it. I will give my honest opinion. And, well, you can see how that is.
But unfortunately, my honest opinion might include a little bit of dunking. But
well,
there are reasons why.
As long as it's a little bit. You know, I've seen a video on that Chinese spy app. What was it called? TikTok. I've done some shorts on there, you know. They're very nice. I think people like them. But somebody takes a cookie and they stuff it in the water like they're going to dip it, you know. You put it down in there, then you pull it right up and eat it. That's how you're supposed to do it. But he leaves it there. And he leaves it there. And he leaves it there. And he leaves it there. He's still leaving it there. And then finally he pulls it, and all that's left is a little crumb in between his fingers. So let's not do that. Just a little, maybe some slight dipping, okay? Make the cookie a little soggy.
I don't think I have to do much, though. The movie is already fairly soggy within this metaphor. I'm just accurately reporting on my findings here.
Well, let's go ahead and dig on in. So, like I said, there will be spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, you should go ahead and just come back later after you see the movie. The movie pretty much starts out in the modern day, and we're following Cersei. After we get a scroll explaining the beginning of the world, that was the little shakening. There wasn't a narrator. I'm more used to a narrator of some kind than a scroll.
Yeah, I think for the purposes of this, it would have made more sense to have maybe Ajax or Thena or whomever do some kind of narration, or better yet, have them explain their presence to some primitive humans when they first arrive. That would have also made a little bit more sense.
I think Arishem maybe should have done the narrating.
Yeah, basically have him do Discount Watcher from What If.
So let's go ahead, and so we start in the modern day, and we're following Cersei. She is dating a guy named Dane, which has his own stuff going on a little later. But she is living with an Eternal named Sprite. We get some explanation after Deviant reemerges. Dun, dun, dun. And they haven't been around for years and years because the Eternals thought they killed them all. Suddenly Icarus comes in, and he manages to fight back against, I believe they call him Crow, even though he's not a really good representation of Crow. And he slinks back.
Crow in name only.
Let's go ahead and talk about the Deviants for a second, because the Deviants in here are explained to be creatures created for, well, the destruction, to make sure that the apex predators that would harm the worlds, as it were, they were sent there to keep that down. But they began to evolve, and apparently the Celestials lost control of them. That's what they're saying. And they're really just big monsters. which is very disappointing because I've read a little bit of the Eternals. I didn't want to go in completely blind, but I read a little bit of Eternals, and it's explained that in there, deviants are one of the three cousins, as it were. So there's the humans, the Eternals, and the deviants. They're all connected. They're just different.
Yeah,
And the deviants are. Mhm.
Go ahead. The long and the short of it is, for a comic backstory, apparently Earth is really freaking important to basically everyone in the universe, because everyone in the universe in like Earth's prehistory descended on Earth and tried to genetically fiddle with things. And when the Celestials genetically fiddled with humans, half of them basically turned into Eternals, but because the humans have a latent X gene that gives us mutants later, the portion of humanity that would be mutants in the context of the Eternals become what are called deviants. And incidentally, in the comics, Thanos' backstory involved him being half Eternal and half deviant.
So I have a theory on that I'm going to go into a little later, if that's okay, because that has to deal with a post-credit scene. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, there are two important ones. This is very rare for a Marvel movie, I think. Usually it's one comedic one and one that has to do with the plot line later on. But this is a little different. So getting back into the story, the deviants are basically big monsters until Crow evolves into having, a voice and the powers of the Eternal. They go to Ajax, but Ajax, played by Salma Hayek, is already dead. He's already gone. And it's very disappointing because I wanted more Salma Hayek. But we get flashbacks, so that's where we get to see her. So as we're seeing, as they're going through history, we see how they get involved. They are only allowed to be involved if a deviant is involved. If they're not, then they have to sit back and just let things happen naturally.
Yeah.
That's how Ashmere, or no. Well, say the name.
Which one?
The Celestial.
Darn it. Arishem. There we go.
Arishem. That's how he, commanded them. So when they come to Earth, if there is not a deviant involved, they are not allowed to get involved, which is why they were not there when Thanos destroyed half the population.
Yeah, and further necessary context here. Basically, in the 70s, Jack Kirby got himself on an Ancient Aliens story kick, and it resulted in him creating the new gods for DC. Then they had a falling out, and he went and basically did the same thing for Marvel by creating the Eternals, which is basically why the Eternals are these immortal beings that have names similar to mythology, because in the context of the Marvel Universe, they inspired the mythology they're named for, basically.
Yeah, so like you have Thena, played by a lovely Angelina Jolie. I've seen some photos of her lately, and she's looked a little rough, but in this movie, she looked lovely. And Thena is supposed to be Athena, the hero of Athens, they call her. I guess they had a little deviant problem back then. But
I think it's implied that a lot of the monsters from Greek mythology or mythology in general were either deviants in some way or they were misinterpreted deviants. I think that's what the movie was going for.
Yeah, and you know what? That actually kind of works. In the classic Kirby run, you had Crow coming and he had horns on his head and like, look at me, I'm Satan. Quickly,
yet another of Marvel's discount devils. Move over Catan, move over Dormammu, move over Mephisto.
Well, it worked to get some fear in the people, so that was the point of it. But here they're just big monsters, so it's very disappointing how kind of stupid they are, because they're very advanced when it comes to Eternals, the classic run. But moving right along with the story, Ajax is dead, so they're trying to figure it out. there's this little glowing orb that comes out of Ajax that allows, oh my goodness, I need
Arishem.
help. Arishem. That allows Arishem to contact the Eternals. And now, who is chosen but Cersei? Yes. And that's when it's fully explained how the Eternals aren't actually there to save the people of Earth. They are there to, well, keep the deviants down so that way the humans can grow and grow and grow.
Yeah. Humans are basically cattle for the birth of a celestial. Basically, if you've ever seen the Doctor Who episode from the Peter Capaldi era, Kill the Moon, the same way that the space creature from that episode used the moon as like an egg, apparently celestials use planets with organic living entities on it as gestation cradles for new celestials.
I think that's kind of neat. If I'm honest, that is really neat. And I don't know how they do it in the comics, but
the birth of the Celestials is a bit different in the comics. Basically, initially in the Marvel cosmology, there was one universe, one version of the entity known as Eternity, and said original version of Eternity created the Celestials so that it could have the opportunity to experience life. And some of the Celestials screwed off and betrayed
the Prime
betrayed their purpose because the initial Celestials wanted everything to be perfect and in the design of the primary universe. But a secondary group of Celestials got it in their heads that it would be more interesting and more meaningful if life had a free will or a destiny of its own, independent of the baseline desires of the primary universe. And there was a massive celestial war, which eventually resulted in the destruction of the primary universe and the creation of the first multiverse.
Yeah, I did not know that. But yeah, I don't mind the idea of Celestials using planets to be born. I think that's quite interesting, if I'm honest. Though it leads to the question, is every planet with life just a shell of a celestial egg? We'll have to wait and see.
It's entirely probable.
But moving right along into this. So at that point, Cersei tells everybody what's going on and why they're there. And Kingo has joined at this point, and he's actually the most lighthearted of the group, I suppose we could say, with his little human side companion.
I like him. I think the best of the main lot. The only one that's in contention otherwise is Sprite, really, because they actually give her a pretty decent character arc. But Kingo's thing is he realizes he's functionally immortal. He realizes that he has literally all the time in the world, and he realizes he's basically genetically perfect. So what does he do? He gets in on the early days of Hollywood and becomes a Bollywood actor. Because why wouldn't you? And he even has this thing where he pretends to be his own relatives, much in the same way as Hob Gadling does in the Neil Gaiman run of The Sandman, and it's kind of hilarious. But yeah, he's the one that injects the most life, I think, into the proceedings.
Yeah, and I think that it's. I expected not to actually like him. I thought he'd be annoying, but I was wrong. And it's okay to be wrong.
I knew as soon as they casted Kumail Nanjiani that I'd have a hard time not thinking of him as my favorite, because I just enjoy Kumail Nanjiani in basically everything he's in. If they ever do a live action Simpsons, I want him to play Apu.
Oh, well, I hope they don't do a live action Simpsons. But moving on straight into the story, and we're going to do some skipping here because there's a lot to explain. Because this movie, while it is long, there is a lot of meat to it. Eventually, the Eternals try to figure out a way of how they're going to stop the emergence, because they come to the consensus that They can't allow all these people that they've watched over for thousands of years to just die.
I like humanity too much, and also the rest of the world is pretty good too, you know.
Yeah. Of course, you do have like Kingo, who says, "Do we really have the right to stop a celestial being born?" But he says he'll follow him to the end, and they get the rest of their party. They have to fight off some deviants. They lose some Eternals along the way, but it leads to the end. And there's eventually, whenever they're trying to make up the one mind, that's their invention.
Yeah, the Unimind. It's a thing that technically also applies, I believe, to Celestials, but is available to a lesser degree among the creation of the Celestials, which includes, obviously, of course, the Eternals. And they actually end up using the power of the Unimind, which basically lets them merge and amplify all their respective powers to defeat the Celestial that's in its infancy and allow in the process of being born.
Yeah. But when they're working on it, this Unimind, they are betrayed by who? Icarus. It turns out that thousands of years ago, Ajax explained the truth behind the Celestials and why they're there, their real mission. And it goes back to 6 days later. He was there with Ajax on her ranch, and she says that the emergence is coming, and they've got to get everyone together. They have to stop it. And Icarus says, of course, yeah, but I have to show you something first. They go to Alaska, and Icarus shows the deviants. Though they thought they killed them all, apparently some were frozen beneath the ice and have just emerged once again. And
which they didn't make a global warming reference. I was very grateful that they didn't make.
I thought they were going
global
to,
warming
but they
reference.
didn't.
Yeah, because that would have really gone into like Fern Gully and the worst parts of Wall-E territory, and I wouldn't have enjoyed that.
But as they're looking down, Icarus starts explaining how she lost her way. He was worried that she would, and she knows why she's there. Icarus is very heartbroken that he has to, but he feels like he must. He pushes her down.
Yeah, he's a zealot worshiping the Celestials as basically gods, which, to be fair, are basically what the Celestials are in relation to the Eternals.
Yeah. So did she for millions of years. So, yeah. And she is ultimately killed by the main deviant, Crow, who absorbs her power and changes form. And that's how they are able to heal themselves now. I didn't mention that before, but it's not really important to the story. So with this betrayal, they have to work without Icarus, as Icarus is trying to thwart them, trying to find, Makari. Yes, Makari.
Mm-hmm.
Who was, I thought it was fine. I know a lot of people get very bothered by most major race swaps and gender swaps. I didn't mind for Makari.
That is not the thing that bothered me. The thing that bothered me was most of the actors here are flatter than a pancake in terms of their delivery and their characterization.
Well, I don't think hers was, especially for somebody who can't really speak because she's deaf.
Well, yeah, she tried, and I'm not bashing on her in particular. I just think the way that this was directed did not do anyone, even the more established actors like Angelina Jolie and Salma Hayek, it didn't do anyone any favors really, because it sort of does that very like dramatic thing of like the more sterile and emotionless and ethereal we play it, the more dramatic it is. And I don't think that was a good move, especially because these are immortal beings, and it would have benefited the movie to humanize them as much as possible. And I think they tried in some areas, but I don't think it ultimately landed because of the way I'm going to chalk it up to Chloe Zhao. I think Chloe Zhao is used to doing like Oscar baity, pretentious, dramatic type movies, and she's used to having actors who work within that mold. And what was really necessary here, I think, was character performances.
So here's what I'm going to say. I think a lot of the characters, though the major ones, like Icarus, kind of falls in that flat category, and I really think that's on the actor. You know, I saw him in Game of Thrones, and I didn't know what he was going to do here. I really think that his delivery isn't all that great.
Yeah, he basically just did the same thing he did in Game of Thrones here,
Yeah.
more or less.
And I think Cersei did all right. I really did. And Salma Hayek, for as short of a time that she...
Yeah, for the 20 minutes she was in the movie, which is a profound waste of Salma Hayek, because while she was on screen, she was the most likable character, and then was no more.
I'm going to go ahead and we have a separated Y to introduce our guest. Once again, we have another guest. Apparently, there was some time confusion on my part. No blame to him, but we are happy to have him on the channel, and that is the one, the only, the comic quirky Jimmy. Hello.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello.
Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Jimmy, can you? I
Yes.
can hear you.
We can hear you fine, but there appears to be a delay on your end.
Oh, he has dropped. I'm sure he will return, but while he is fixing that, let me go ahead and get back into the movie. So they're trying to use the Unimind to put the Celestial within it, Tiamat, I think that's
Tiamat, yes.
to sleep. They're trying to put him to sleep, and they're going to figure out a way to save the people of Earth. That's their goal. And though they try, Icarus comes to the island where the Celestial will emerge and blast Druig, the one who kind of left them in part years and years ago, who is able to mind control people, for a lack of a better term. Take two with Jimmy.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
What's up?
We are just... I'm about to finish the explanation for Eternals. We're going into the plot line before we give our full-on thoughts. We're basically at the final moments. On the island where the emergence is going to take place, Druig is... well, he is blasted by Icarus, and it appears he is dead. And he said earlier that he will kill anybody who gets in the way of it, but it seems that his threat is true. So the plan changes at that moment. It is no longer to put him to sleep. They are going to use Cersei, who earlier turned one deviant into a tree. They're going to use her.
She has matter transmutation abilities, which,
yes,
amplified by the Unimind, allows her to turn the Celestial into stone.
Yes, and Jimmy appears to be having some technical difficulties. I am sorry to hear that. After I finish explaining, I will promptly shut my puppet mouth and allow you to have your take as soon as I get to where I'm going. So the Eternals, the ones that are fighting to stop this, all try to keep Icarus busy. And one, Festos, actually succeeds in keeping him bound for a short amount of time, so Cersei can try to make it. But Sprite, who left with Icarus earlier because she is apparently in love with Icarus, even though she can never truly have his love because she is a child.
Yeah, she's unfortunately, she is a being whose mind matures like anyone else's, but her body, much like Claudia from Interview with a Vampire, remains statically the age she was created as. So despite being 7,000 years old and having seen the rise and fall of humanity and so on, she can love no one because it would be extremely creepy.
Yes. But she stabbed Cersei. Dun dun dun. Because, well, she's trying to keep her. And that's when it's revealed that Druig is not dead, knocks her out, and Cersei runs. But they are pretty much too late. The emergence starts. We see the giant celestial hand coming out of the earth, his head rising. And that's when she has to do what she was afraid of. And she touches the hand that she is standing upon and starts to turn him into stone, steel, don't know what, but kill him.
I think it was supposed to be stone, but it ends up looking a little bit more like ice in the effect.
Really, I was thinking it was more like metal, like iron or steel, you know?
Yeah.
But,
Irregardless, the Celestial has been immobilized. Yay.
yeah, well, Icarus tried to stop it. He came and was about to, but that's when the Unimind activates. Icarus is a part of it, and they stop the Celestial. Icarus is filled with guilt. He looks at her
Does
for a
the
moment.
only thing anyone knows Icarus for doing in the mythology and flies himself into the sun.
Fly me to the sun. Ow, ow, I'm on fire! Ah! Like that. And the movie is starting to wind down. Cersei is with Dane. We'll see Jimmy again in a little bit, I hope. Cersei's with Dane. We get to say the goodbyes. I should have mentioned this earlier, but Kingo did not help with the Celestial because once Icarus left, he wouldn't have any part of it, but he wasn't going to hurt his family.
Yeah, he peaced out.
Yeah.
I'm going back to Bollywood because it's more fun. Goodbye.
And after that, it seems that Sprite, though she did betray them, Cersei says, I can turn you human. You won't live forever, but you'll grow up. And that's what Sprite wants. So, after Sprite is turned into a human, she's going to be going to school, it's revealed. And the movie seems to be ending on a high note. Everything's safe.
Yeah. Peter Pan meets Pinocchio. Yay.
But then, after Dane and, Cersei are together, there's a moment. The sky starts to part as we see eyes, 6 of them about, looking down, and Arishem is there. He collects the Eternals, specifically Cersei, Kingo, and what's his name? Festus? Fastos?
Yeah, Fastos.
And tells them that they have decided to they have decided to end the life of a Celestial and to save the people of Earth. That is all very well, and the people will be spared, but they will have to face judgment. Dun dun dun.
Which is the primary purpose of the Celestials in the comics, by the way. What they do is they go to possibly hospitable planets. They either create life thereon, or they fiddle with the life that's already there to improve it, much like the High Evolutionary, which is another character that does something similar to this. And then they peace out for a couple dozen thousand years, and then when the species or the civilization has matured, they come back and see how the petri dish is evolving, basically. And if they don't like the results, well, too bad, so sad for you. Goodbye, planet. If they do, then they give the people all sorts of advanced technology and basically boost them into a class 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale. But
let's go ahead and take a moment. We're going to talk about the mid-credit and post-credit scene here in just a second, but let's go ahead and introduce Jimmy!
All right, maybe this will work.
Alrighty, we're just at the end of the movie. I'm about to explain the post-credit and the end-credit scene, if you're okay with that.
Go ahead.
Alrighty. The mid-credit scene, we see Thena, Makari, and Druig. They left on the spaceship. I believe they call it Domo, which was actually a character in the original run. But they take the Domo, as it were, and they travel, and they're trying to find more Eternals.
Yeah.
They want to explain to them the truth of their mission and think that they will, too, join them. But as they're traveling, I think they're supposed to be also looking for maybe sorry, not Thena, Cersei, the ones that were taken by the
Airsham.
Yeah, Airsham. Thank you. My goodness, that name is so hard to remember. I should make a scroll wheel at the bottom with just all the names I'm going to have problems with.
Yeah, the name is Airsham.
Airsham.
The name of the
Airsham
celestial.
took, and they cannot find them.
I
But-
had trouble with Tiamut.
Yeah, me too. But I was able to find the name before I spoke it. But that is when a small little elf goblin thing appears, named Pip, and he introduces Eros, the brother of Thanos. Harry Styles has joined the Marvel Universe.
Yes, and Patton Oswalt is playing Pip the Troll.
Oh, that's who it was.
And
But
Pip the Troll CGI was some of the worst CGI I've seen in a long time.
yeah, but I think it's to me it's forgivable because they are making such a creature.
Not to me, man. You got Rocket Raccoon, man, and he looks perfect. But then you got Pip the Troll. It's like, nah.
Because one's a real thing. A troll isn't a real thing.
All right,
I actually am having trouble hearing Jimmy. I'm going to disconnect and reconnect because sometimes StreamYard does this thing when someone comes in later that you can't hear them. So I'll be right back.
Okay. Zach, yes, they did actually show Pip the Troll, and he announces Eros, the brother of Thanos. So Eros comes in, and he's, I'm Harry Styles, hello. And he introduces himself as Star Fox, I believe, but they could call him Eros. And he is the brother of Thanos. And he says he's, huh?
They did say both names.
Yeah. And he is there to pretty much help them. But here's a little side note. Here's where my theory comes in. Because in the comics, Thanos does have the deviant gene. And here they have made the deviants big monsters. So how can you connect this into the universe? My theory, as it were, is that on Titan, the deviants got so advanced that they became like, well, the people of Titan there. So when you have Star Fox, when you have Arrow saying that my fellow Eternals, he is too an Eternal, but it has somehow emerged on that world that they move on, and that's how Thanos gets the deviant gene.
Well, Titan was initially the Eternals' home world, I believe, in the comics.
No, so it was Olympia.
They went to Titan fairly early on because we follow in a lot of the runs the Titan society of Eternals and Deviants.
Yeah, and Jason Aaron's Thanos Rising, they expressed that fluently, where Thanos even went into the genetics of the Eternals' body.
Well, I'm trying to figure it out for the Marvel Universe because we see the Deviants in this movie as big monsters. And, well, that's very disappointing considering the Deviants I saw in the books.
I have a theory that the Deviants we're seeing in the Eternals, and this might be a retcon, and if it is, then use it, Marvel, please. It makes more sense than what you might otherwise do. Because the Celestials fiddle with all life on a given planet, what if the Deviants we see in the Eternals movie are just the Deviants of animals, not the Deviants of bipedal humanoids?
Well, they evolve. So, like I said, my theory was
by taking the energies from the Eternals, which allows them to take on a humanoid appearance. I'm saying if they wanted to retcon it later, so that Thanos could still have his half deviant, half Eternal backstory, just have it that in other places throughout the universe, the Deviants were more humanoid because they were humanoid Deviants.
So while that is true, it's explained by Airsham that, hey, I got the name right. Yay! It's explained by Airsham that the deviants they sent were evolving. They evolved with every creature they were killing, becoming the apex predator. So my theory, as it were, is that they get to that point on Titan, and they become, human-ish, humanoid. And that's where the history gets a little muddled there. And so eventually Thanos could get that deviant gene. I'm going to go ahead and address something right now. Maranya says, odd that the MCU double-casted role, as Oswalt was in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series.
The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't canon because at that point in the production history...
Hey, 1 second, I'm about to say that. But Gemma Chan, I believe that's her name, plays Cersei. She was also in Captain Marvel as an alien, a blue alien, but an alien. But another side note is that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is no longer...
No, but we also got to note that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't in the canon.
No. Yeah,
it was... At that point, Marvel TV was Ike Perlmutter's baby, and when Ike Perlmutter and Kevin Feige had their falling out because Perlmutter wanted to restrain Feige's creativity and keep him to the normie stuff, they had a falling out, and Disney gave creative control over to Feige. So everything that Ike Perlmutter was the driving force behind is no longer canon. And in my opinion, I think that's mostly for the better. Although I will say
is still part of the Perlmutter, because that was his idea, but then he got booted and
Inhumans was his idea.
Well, yeah, I know, but also like there's some movies coming out right now that are still part of his era.
He still helped brainstorm with them, but I would venture that Kevin Feige took the reins and went, I'm gonna do what I want to do now. Because that
I feel like the Eternals the Eternals was like a set thing. Okay, we're gonna bring these in, and then Perlmutter got booted and Feige took over. He has full 100% power, and it was from what I heard, this was a already made script, and everything was like set in place. But then Kevin Feige switched out the director for Chloe Zhao, and
because he wanted Oscar points, basically, more or less.
Pretty much.
Which is I think the primary mistake of this movie, if anything. But that's a discussion we can have in a minute.
Yes. But I want to go ahead. We've had our discussion about that a little bit. I want to go for the last scene, which, usually they end on a kind of comedic scene instead to lighten people up. But here they did not. They show Dane Whitman, who explained earlier before Cersei was taken by Arishem, how his family history is complicated. There's a box, and within it, he opens it, and he reads the words there. And
the ebony blade.
The ebony blade. And as he looks at it, it looks like he's about to reach for it. There's a voice behind him off screen that says, "Are you ready for it?" And that's where it ends. And a lot of people, I will say, are identifying this voice as the actor who played Cottonmouth in Luke Cage, who is going to be playing
Mahershala Ali.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't remember his name. But
it's Mahershala Ali.
He is what people are thinking is the person speaking off screen.
It's supposed to be Blade. I didn't put that together. I heard some people say they thought it sounded like Nick Fury, which I didn't think it sounded like at all.
I heard people talking about that too.
I thought it was supposed to be a reference to Percival, the original Black Knight, in the Marvel universe. But
that's a good theory. I like that more.
I like that one more than Blade.
Honestly, I'm glad we're finally getting into the Arthurian stuff. And honestly, and this is my...
Hey, if Transformers did it with Michael Bay, the Marvel universe...
Well, let's never ever bring that up again, because that was some Arthur C. Clarke BS. But let's just not.
That's another conversation.
I like the movie because it's fucking Transformers with knights. It's rad.
Now, I can feel the rage that's growing below. Let's not talk about Transformers.
Yeah, but okay. Stepping aside the Michael Bay explosion-shaped elephant in the room, I'm so glad we're getting Arthurian stuff in the MCU finally. Although I will say, when one of my main problems with this movie is the post-credit scenes were double-fold more interesting than anything else in the movie. And I found myself, my initial thought when the post-credit scenes happened was, couldn't we have started the movie here? Because like they made a big deal about how Dane Whitman was in it and how he's the Black Knight and all.
Exactly.
And then I was like, okay, so you're doing a history-based movie, a movie that touches on the history of the Marvel Universe that we haven't seen yet, the primordial, prehistory history. So this would be the perfect place to introduce Arthur and such, because the Eternals are weird and trippy and cosmic enough to fit somewhere in there. And also, because it's a history movie, you can have the Eternals watching humanity as the events of things like the Arthurian legends.
I definitely think this could have been perfect for the Black Knight to come in, but they also could have related it back to WandaVision with Agatha Harkness, because isn't she related to Morgan Le Fay?
Descendant wise, I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to look that up.
I'm gonna look it up because I swear to God I thought she was. I'll be right back.
As Zach Richmond says, Black Knight was the only part of the movie that he was remotely excited for. I'm going to say I was a little more excited for that. And I think I'm actually going into, because the time is building up here, but I want to go ahead and talk about how overall I felt about this movie. Okay. And I'm just going to start out with saying, with a Rotten Tomato score of 49% from critics, of all people, critics, you don't know what to expect because critics, I often do not trust them. And
half the time they're complaining because the movie actually isn't good, and half the time they're complaining because they're a bunch of aristocratic fops who have all sorts of external
let's keep
standards.
The F-bombs down.
I said fops, not the other word I think you heard.
Oh, you said fox?
No, I said fops, as in a flighty over the top aristocrat, as in foppish.
Oh, fop. Oh, there's a P there. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm going to say that yes, I do often think of them such as that, but I didn't know what to expect, especially considering this is the first time the critics have really panned a Marvel movie. But this was not as bad as it's going to be made out to be. I do not think it's the worst film. It's the best Marvel film of this year, honestly.
Sorry.
You are crazy if you think that.
No.
I have to agree with Jimmy on this one. Not only is this the worst Marvel movie of the year, it beat out Thor: The Dark World for my least favorite Marvel movie.
No. It's okay. It's not that bad, but it's also not as bad as Black Widow.
I'm
At least
just to disclose my bias here. The reason I think it's worse for me on my end is because I'm actually a big fan of this particular corner of the Marvel Universe and comics in general. So when something that should be over the top, cosmic and metaphysical, undersells, it hurts me a lot more than it does when the normie stuff might be less than adequate. That's why I placed the first two Thor movies so low, is because Thor should be right within my wheelhouse, but wasn't because they mismanaged it. And in the same vein, Eternals should be directly in the center of my wheelhouse, and they mismanaged it horribly. Especially when you consider they've done this right at least 3 times in the Marvel Universe, with the first 2 Guardians and with Thor Ragnarok. Now,
so what I'm going to say to that is really the reason why I do not the reason why I favor this over even Black Widow or Shang-Chi is because I actually have more of a connection to Shang-Chi, and so the final act of that just really left a bad taste in my little puppet mouth. And Black Widow, while I did enjoy it, I had a lot of fun with it, I did not think it was all around that good of a movie. I could enjoy it, but this movie, while it has some lacking areas, the stuff that's happening in Black Widow or Shang-Chi, I did not feel as much. And with Eternals, at least I can get that, oh my gosh, a Celestial's being born, trying to destroy the Earth. And I'm getting what they're telling me. Whereas Shang-Chi is just a total misrepresentation of the original character. Black Widow is a fun movie, but it's not a spy movie when you're dealing with the world's top spy.
And let's also be honest, if there was going to be a Black Widow movie, it should have focused on the Clint and Natasha meeting in Budapest that they kept talking about every time they were on screen together.
Yeah.
Budapest,
Also,
Budapest.
I think, dude, Black Widow is two different movies. The first half hour to 45 minutes of that movie was so freaking good. But then they diverged into Marvel quippy, boring comedy. And
let's not even talk about what they did to
cheesy.
Taskmaster either.
Oh yeah, not even talking about. Oh my god, that's an abomination. But also and you say it's the best movie of the year. I mean, I gotta go
best
with
Marvel movie. Best Marvel.
Oh, best Marvel. Okay,
yeah.
Well then, I mean, there's Loki and then there's Shang-Chi, and I freaking love Shang-Chi.
So, well, I didn't bring up the shows because all of the shows are better than the movies this year. All of them, every single one.
WandaVision horrible. And Captain
Falcon WandaVision was horrible in the ending. Everything leading up to the ending was fine. It's just they really, really, really screwed up the ending.
First two episodes were amazing, and then it went downhill with each episode.
I disagree.
I have to disagree with you because as soon as Agatha came on screen, I was like, "Can I have a dozen of this, please?"
So I disagree with WandaVision. I found myself more interested with every episode. You had Monica Rambeau actually being Monica Rambeau, not a little kid that's, hey, I'm a part of the Captain Marvel fan club. And we see her get her powers through there, and I think that's going to be very interesting. Loki was just Loki. It was fantastic.
Loki was fantastic.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
In a while.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, while it is using the word that I just used, low key in terms of the Marvel universe.
Yeah,
it was just okay.
If we're introducing the shows to the matter, I'd say that if you're just going based on sheer quality and not in relation to the source material, I'd have to say that Falcon and Winter Soldier is actually a little bit worse than this, which is a hard bar to go underneath, but they managed to limbo underneath it because it's a stunt series for BLM, basically, is the problem.
Can you highlight that one? Yeah, thank you very much.
While Graphic Man agrees with Jimmy, has no idea what's going on, we are talking about the best Marvel content of the year, really, because I said that Eternals is better than either of the movies that were released, but it is not better than any of the shows that were released. That includes What If, which is a cartoon.
And the only thing that comes close to... Whoa, sorry, I'm coughing. So the only thing that comes close to being the best of the year is Loki. But the best thing of the year isn't even Marvel. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League. The only thing close to that is Loki. And this movie that just came out felt like it was trying to imitate the feel of a Zack Snyder movie.
I'd say that if we're just going based on comic book movies in general, probably Suicide Squad 2 is the best of the lot this year, in my opinion. But
that's second.
I will say there's definitely some Snyderism going on here, but again, I've taken to kind of referring to Eternals as worse Dune because that's kind of the tone they were going for, in my opinion.
They were definitely going for Dune.
Chloe Zhao was ripping off Denis Villeneuve, and if you've seen my thoughts on Dune over on the Extreme Movie Show or over on Comic Division's channel, I am convinced that Denis Villeneuve was ripping off Christopher Nolan. So we're now either 2 or 3 iterations of rip-off into this aesthetic that I don't even like when it's done well. So, yeah.
So, yes, in reference to what Graphic Man is asking, I would say that it would be talked about, even if it wasn't for Owen
Yes.
Wilson. Owen Wilson was great, but
Owen
sheerly
Wilson
just the
elevated it.
story.
Owen Wilson elevated what was already a really good show.
One of my favorite episodes actually is one without any Owen Wilson, and that is the one where we meet all the Loki variants, and that was great. Marania
that's a good one.
says she is frankly tired of people dissing the normie shows and movies. The best of the shows to her was Falcon Winter Soldier, and the worst overall is Type Between. Oh, I disagree with that, but I think Loki is the best of the year personally.
We can agree. Well, at least I can with Maranya saying that WandaVision is the worst. What If was never made.
What If was good.
Yeah, what if was pretty good, honestly. It wasn't.
What
great.
If was good.
It was good. Which if you saw our reviews, well, and if you haven't, you should go check them out on the channel. I did all of them with Zach.
And you didn't call me for the Doctor Strange one because.
Well, I didn't know if you. I hadn't talked to you in a while, man. I didn't know if you'd be available for it, and I didn't know how you were going to take it because I do know that you don't care for Benedict Cumberbatch. But that is
it had problems. But ironically, I think the tragic aspect of his origin story is done better in the What If episode than it was in the 2016 one.
Oh my God, you and I agree. That's okay. That is the best episode of What If. That Doctor Strange episode was so good.
Zach Richmond says that he heard that Eternals cost more to make than Dune. I'm not sure about that. Probably because
Dune was 150 and Eternals was 180 something.
Yeah, I don't know, but they're fairly comparable in terms of like tone and aesthetic, which is what the kind of point I was making. So it doesn't really matter how much money they spend on it because they both, in my opinion at least, didn't spend it on anything that was engaging or compelling. But that's I know I'm in the minority on that.
Well, yeah. I mean, both Jimmy and I like Dune. I'm pretty sure. But I know that you don't, and that's fine. That's fine. We can disagree. Like with Eternals,
it was a nuclear debate about a week ago. So yeah,
Dune is the best movie of the year.
I agree with that statement. But let's go ahead and look at the comic.
Dune is my Balrog. Mediocrity shall not avail you, film of boredom.
Zach is saying that he stayed up till 4 a.m. for those What If reviews. Watch them. Yes, he put his blood, sweat, and sleep into those reviews.
Hey! No one forced you to do that, man.
Well, we like the show. We like the show. We did. And obviously we can disagree. But let's go ahead, go around. Final thoughts. Let's keep them short, quick. Let's end this video under an hour. Jimmy?
Even though I'm complaining about Eternals, for the most part, I liked it. It was just that third act I wasn't really a huge fan of. Also, there's like 3 endings to the movie, and you're like, every time you're like, oh, it's about to end. Oh, nope. Wait, nope. So the word that comes to mind the best when I think of this movie, it's just mediocre. And that's the best thing I can say. It's a mediocre superhero movie. You're going to go in, you're going to have some fun. Some things you're going to scratch your head, but for the most part, you're going to have some fun.
Yep. All right, Dalton, quick final thoughts.
I hate this movie. I hate it so much. Because there's absolutely no reason they shouldn't have been able to do it right. This was absolutely an avoidable failure. They should know by now that the way to do these kind of cosmic comic book concepts is to just go balls to the wall and embrace the color and embrace the weirdness and embrace the Jack Kirbyism, especially here. Because here's the thing. If you rate these movies on like sheer comic book weirdness, Doctor Strange 2016 was a 2 on the comic book weirdness scale. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 was a 5. Guardians 2, 5.5. Thor Ragnarok, maybe a 6. And like Suicide Squad 2 was a 6.5. Eternals, because of what it is, and because it was Jack Kirby at his most unencumbered, should have been an 11 on the comical weirdness scale. It should have taken the 5 of Guardians and the 5.5 of Guardians 2 and turned that crap up to an 11. And instead, it turned it all the way down to the negative values. It's more dull and bland and blah than Thor: The Dark World. And you would think because of how poorly Thor: The Dark World is received, they would learn you don't do Space Game of Thrones, you do an acid trip movie, especially here. And they didn't. And Jack Kirby is rolling in his grave so fast they might as well install a rotisserie in that thing.
That brings up. Sorry, hold on. That brings up one small point I forgot to mention.
Okay.
2019 San Diego Comic-Con. They told everyone that Eternals is coming, and it's going to be full of Jack Kirby. There was not one thing of Jack Kirby in this that I felt besides the names.
In fact, it was almost the direct inverse of Kirby's style, aesthetic, and concept.
And I was like, you just taunted that to get everyone going, oh, it's Jack Kirby. Finally, the king is getting some respect. And you didn't do it. You just did that to make a quick buck. And that is insulting to the king.
Yeah. So I'm not going to agree. I'm going to say what I'm going to say here. In reference to Jack Kirby, they made it big. And that is what the king was able to do. Jack the King Kirby made things huge. His landscapes were astounding, things like that. The Eternals themselves, their costume.
Size and scale isn't the only thing he did big. He did everything big. He turned everything up to an 11.
Let me say what I'm going to say. But the Eternals themselves, when it came to their costuming, when they were in their actual Eternals wear, it fit the bright colors that really stand out. And yes, it did. Yeah, I could not help but notice Ajax and
no, they were designed weird. They weren't bright. They were kind of dark, kind of like
they were muted. It was almost like the difference between.
Let me say what I'm going to say. I didn't speak during those things.
I couldn't get through that. I'm sorry.
And when it went to Babylon, we saw the bright colors, the greens, the blues. Everything was popping out. When we came to our world, our time, as it were, everything does get bland because our world itself is a little bland, I feel. But
I don't feel that. I think our world is full of color and beauty, but they're just choosing to show the bad side.
And what's more, if you want to talk about color being used in a more grounded setting, look at the John Wick movies and how they're shot and how their color grading works.
But those
are very, very grounded, different. And yet there's 90% more color than in those than in any of this.
But they are very different, I will say. The John Wick movies, and in fact, most of the movies you listed were very different from the kind of movie they were trying to make here. Something serious, something that doesn't treat itself like a joke, like Thor Ragnarok, which I have.
That's not the correct approach for this source material. The problems are conceptual and aesthetic, much like Dalton. I said there was with Dune, but a lot of people disagreed with me.
Dalton, I will agree with something real quick with you, and this is very rare. What you said that Dune should have been is what I think the Eternals should have been.
Well, they both should have been that way, but
okay. Well, I think that's just your bias, but I think Eternal should have just put full balls to the walls because Jack Kirby didn't use like light colors. He used
like I said, if Doctor Strange 2016 is a 2 and Guardians 2 are in the 5 to 6 range, then this movie should have been taking that crap up to an 11, and it took it down to a -5 instead.
I'm going to go ahead and say I will not mute any microphones because I don't feel like that is a good thing to do. We are going to reach over an hour here, but I'm going to say that I think story-wise it matched the scale of what was going on in the classic run of Eternals that I read. I know that it's different. I know that it doesn't follow it correctly, but when we're talking about the story itself, how it is moving, how big it is, I think it does come to match it. It's not as good No, but it comes to match that scale. I don't think the colors are right because the colors are popping, as it were, back then. But this movie is able to match scale. It's able to make things feel big. And while it does have those moments where it goes down with the characters and you have the characters pushing on, I think that overall, when it comes to that, this movie is fairly good. It's fairly good. It's not great. Absolutely not. But it's not bad. It's like how I felt at the end of Captain Marvel when everybody was saying, oh gosh, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. That's an exaggeration. Captain Marvel was not as bad as people make it out to be. And I don't think this movie is as bad as most of the critics make it out to be.
I have to say
the scale of this movie being with the Celestials, with what's that? The Mesopotamia and all these old ancient cities, to Harambe Celestial, I forget his name.
Arishem.
Him. All of them. The scale of this movie I loved. But it was just everything else that I thought was lacking.
But yeah, and here's the thing, and I had said something similar 2 weeks, previous to this, when I think the version of what this movie wanted to be was done better with Dune. But it's not what they're adapting that I have the issue with. What they're adapting is fine. It's how they are choosing conceptually and aesthetically to do so.
Adapt it.
Because when you can do anything, you will be judged on how you choose to do things. And when the main cut and thrust of the defining factor is imagination, you will be judged on the strength of your imagination. And they're just, given the source material, given what this is based on and what it should have been, there's just, not only is there no imagination here, there's not even reasonable follow through with what was already there. And that's my problem. My problem is when they take something that should be over the top, should be weird, should be trippy, and they untrippy it for reasons of they're ashamed of the source material. Well, if you're ashamed of the source material, give it up and give it to somebody who wants to adapt the source material as it is.
I don't see the shame that you're saying. When I read what I read, I'm saying that while it is not as bright and colorful, it matches story scale. But Rhaegar is asking a question. Which show had the best and most coherent plot logic with the most rational character motivations? Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, or Loki? Marani saying Falcon and Winter Soldier to her.
Loki.
It's Loki. Simple answer. He doesn't want to die, so he's going to do everything he can to not die.
And unlike WandaVision, it stuck the ending and didn't completely bait and switch the audience and tell you, all that investment you had about all the things we were building up? Well, we're just going to set them all on fire like Joker setting money on fire in The Dark Knight because something message.
Also, like the ending of it, when people are like, oh, it's a bait and switch. No, it's not. We were trying to figure out who was behind this all, and we knew it wasn't going to be those robot things.
Yep.
And we know Kang is going to be in Quantumania.
And when we got there,
Kang the Conqueror.
No, the whole story was like leading up to who is behind it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And while WandaVision, it doesn't have that, I feel like some of the best character study, as it were, is onto Wanda because she is the main character and going into it. But as far as the best show when it came to the plot and the characters, I really think that it is Loki. And I know you don't agree, Marania, but that's okay. And it will be there will be a second season to it, and I'm excited to see that. But I think that about does it for Eternals. So we want to thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and comment if you're watching this afterwards. Let us know what you think. You heard our thoughts. You can have any thoughts you want. Just please be respectful down there. Also, make sure to subscribe. Trying to build a base here, and we need your help. Also, check out the Ko-Fi if you got a time. Trying to keep the lights on, as it were, because if the lights go off, what's going to happen? You won't be able to see me. And what's the point of seeing a puppet if you can't see it? But
Shadow play theater.
Yeah. I want to thank Jimmy. I want to thank Dalton, the Authenticator, for joining us. Be sure to check out both of their channels. They are on here on the YouTubes, Comic Quirks with Jimmy and Dalton, the Authenticator. And as Zach has pointed out, Hawkeye's coming out in 3 weeks. We are going to be watching and reviewing that. And both of you, of course, are welcome to join reviews for that.
Forgot about Hawkeye. That was my most anticipated show after the San Diego Comic-Con. But then Loki.
It actually looks pretty decent, and I enjoy the Christmas theming for it. So hopefully they'll stick the landing. And what's more, they don't make Kate Bishop entirely insufferable. They actually give her decent chemistry with Hawkeye. So
we'll have to wait and see. Alrighty, so that is it. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the show. We will see you next time. Be sure to check out England Teen Loves Comics. They're going to be doing a reading later, and I know none of us are there, but I want to go ahead and give them a shout out. I know that Froggy's human friends will be there, and that's what matters. So we will see you next time, and bye!
Cheers, guys.